Greetings, family, and welcome again to Cultural Law Center's presentation of Louisiana, Day 2. Louisiana presentation is a three-part series focusing on the past, present, and future of New Orleans' and Louisiana's complex relationship with land, climate, and culture. My name is Frederick Wood Delahousie, and it's my pleasure to serve as the Chief Creative Officer and Artistic Director of the Cultural Law Center in New Orleans, Louisiana. I can be referred to in conversation by Wood or by pronouns he and him. I am a light-skinned, honey butter brown black warrior poet with dark brown eyes and thick eyebrows. And what some folks might call a goatee, I call a pharaoh's mane. I am a New Orleans artist, which means I live and breathe art and culture. It is the soundtrack to our lives. It's the tone of our existence. It speaks to the history in all of us. It lays tracks to our lineage, to our roots, to our neighborhoods, and the birth of this nation. To live in New Orleans is to plan a part of our lives around second lines and festivals and Super Sundays. We open our windows and let the music tell us that an elder has fallen, that an ancestor has come on board. To live in New Orleans and Louisiana is to have an intimate relationship with culture and rhythm and to walk to a beat that sometimes only we can hear. We are a magical, mystical, musical place where we sing and dance because celebration is not only beautiful, but it's necessary. And it's every bit of who we are. And it is my honor again this evening to welcome you to another edition of Losing Louisiana. Let us begin by paying homage to the land.
I wish to begin by giving thanks to the Creator for the many gifts bestowed upon us. I wish to acknowledge the truly indigenous, the flora, the fauna, and all of our non-human relatives. I acknowledge all of the life forms that preceded our own existence and continues to make our lives possible today. For in our teaching, we the people are the youngest members of creation. I want to acknowledge the ancestors and the elders, their wisdom and contributions from our past, continuing to our present with their wisdom, always guiding us to our future. It is an honor to speak to you. I am of the Atakapa Ishak Shuwasha people, indigenous to the southern regional lands and waters in the place that today is known as Louisiana. We mark our continuous inhabitation numbered by countless centuries on these, our ancestral lands, always living between the mighty river and the great Gulf. Our story of origin began with the waters. We continue to live by and depend on the waters to this present day. We are water people. We are one of the many First Nations who marked our time of existence and continue to live our lives in this region, still indigenous in our life practices, serving as stewards on our tribal and traditional lands, working to protect and preserve its bounties, gifted into our care as a sacred trust by the Creator. Many changes have come to these lands. There are newcomers who today lay a claim of ownership to our unceded lands. I will say to them, stating the names of the first inhabitants of these ancestral lands is just the beginning. The responsibility of stewardship now resides with you. It is a sacred responsibility to do all within your power to protect, to preserve that to which you now lay claim, not for self-enrichment, but as a legacy to the future generations. Know that we, the first inhabitants, will continue to work alongside anyone who willingly steps into stewardship. We're all descended from indigenous people from many lands across the globe. And for our collective future, we must stand up and step up to use the wisdom of the elders, our collective knowledges, and will to work to heal our lands, to clean our air and waters, work to return balance to life. This can only be accomplished if we remember that we are all called to stewardship. What we do today will be revealed in our tomorrow, and our tomorrow depends on how we live today. The great circle is real. In closing, I quote the wisdom of an elder and a very wise man. And he said to us, enough is abundance. And in gratitude, I thank the Creator for that abundance. The blessings to everyone. Thank you.
My name is Ed Sarabia. However, that is and is not my name. I am from the Tlingit tribal nation. I'm a member of it, which is from Southeast Alaska, roughly what is called Juneau, Ketchikan, Sitka, Wrangell, Petersburg area. And we share that area with the Haida tribe as well as Tsimshians. Names in my tribe originally came and belonged only to families. My real name is Stockwan. That name goes back about 2,000 years, handed down from generation to generation within our family. And we, all families, particularly traditional individuals from my family, can trace their names and their origins to an individual. The one that started, and it was a female who created it, obviously. Her name was Garakteyi, which in English means the woman who raised the woodworm. And that is my family name, Garakteyi. And whenever I am around, I carry, or sometimes I'll carry the symbol of my tribe, my family. It's not my tribe, it's my family. The one of my tribe is different. But so traditionally, my name, Stockwan, really belongs to my family. But in this modern world, the mortality rate of us Tlinkits and natives in Southeast Alaska has jumped considerably. When I was young, if you hit 45 and 50, you were old. You probably would die. And one of the reasons behind that was we lived off the land and the water. Tlingit in English means tides people, water people, or fishermen. I remember people ask, oh, did you ride horses on them? I never saw a horse till I was about 25, and that was at some kind of fair, county fair. And, a lot of people, again, who believed they were experts on Indians would tell me, oh, you Indians ride horses. Well, no, not all of us. So anyway, my name, Stockwan, is as sacred. Yeah, I can trace my name and my family back at least 2,000 years.
Ayutpeche, Miko Omas, Okata Ansihili, Yemesi Bonjour, Yemesi Pohodri. Hello, I'm Chief Capella of the United Houma Nation. And I just want to say thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to you. and welcome you to the United Homo Nation land. On behalf of myself, my council, and my tribal citizens, we welcome you.
Yiltol, Anhike Jeffrey Dernsburg, Takapo Ishak Yukitiki. I'm Jeffrey Dernsburg of the Atakapa Ishak Nation of Indians. And the Ashe Cultural Arts Center, where I am now, is located in a place that Native people, like me, have known for centuries as Bolbancha. It's a word in the Choctaw language meaning the place of other languages. We called this place Bolbancha because it was a frequent trading and cultural interaction zone located between three bodies of water, Lake Oquata, Bayou Shupik, and the river Bolbancha, which this part of the river is called. Bayou Shupik you might know as Bayou St. John, Lake Oquata you probably know as Lake Pontchartrain, and of course the Mississippi River, another indigenous word. Here in Bolbancha, people traded and danced and sang together for many centuries before the first French incursions into the area. Indigenous people still live here. Members of the tribes that were here originally still exist in this place. This was a trading zone for over 30 different groups, including the Tunica, the Biloxi, the Homa, the Chitimacha, the Choctaw, Washaw, Shawashaw, and many other groups, including my own tribe, the Atakapa Ishak. During the early days of colonization, chattel slavery was introduced into this area, beginning with Iberville's first visit. He mentioned wanting to bring slaves here. Indigenous people were trafficked and enslaved in this place. African people were trafficked and enslaved in this place, and mixtures of the two as well. The legacy of indigenous populations here exists not only in members of tribes such as myself, but also in our Creole population of mixed ethnicity people. There are also many indigenous people who have come here from so-called south of the border. They are indigenous as well, and the Americas are their home. Thank you for listening, and please do not forget the indigenous peoples of this area. Do not forget the word Bolbancha. Bolbancha is still a place. Well.
Giving thanks to Elder Rosina, our dear brother Edward Sarabia, of course, Chief Coco Capel, and Dr. Jeffrey Darrensburg for that phenomenal land acknowledgement. We wouldn't be Ashe if we didn't sneak a little art in here on you. So before we begin this phenomenal panel, let me give y'all something to think about. Giving thanks to Sister Jarrell Hamilton, choreographer and dancer, for her vision for that piece. And I apologize. I normally would give a warning that they may have some images that are triggering. But what intrigued me about adding the piece this evening was that there often is an overlooked 1-2 punch when it comes to like natural disasters and things like that. And we overlook the psychological wounds that exist once the storm has passed, once folks are dealing with recovery, once folks are dealing with all the things that have happened. And with that, I lead us into our first panel this evening. Now, I travel this world talking about how, I exist and have agency in the work that I do because of the expert tutelage of phenomenal women of color. I want to introduce one of these sisters to start us off this evening. She is the Chief Equity Officer at the Ashe Cultural Law Center, and she will be the leader of this phenomenal panel this evening. She's a mother, daughter, educator, author, event producer, what else? Performance artist, community servant, all those good things that you have heard and know about this sister. It's all true, I promise y'all. So without further ado, I'd like to add to this conversation my dear sister, Asali Divine, Ecclesiastes.
Oh. Man, a few of the bad things are true too.
I'm gonna turn it over to you, sis, to lead this phenomenal panel. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Well, I am super excited to say good evening to everyone and to introduce a panel that we have tonight that really will help us as a community to guide and explore some potential solutions that can be guided by the kinds of call to action that we heard in the beautiful, beautiful land acknowledgement that was shown at the top of tonight's panel. A call that we are all called to stewardship, right? Is something that we should certainly take to heart. And just want to introduce you to these people. And, I have in front of me, bios and stuff like that, but y'all also know how I am. I like to talk about how I interact with people and, what they mean with me. So when I tell you about Sherelle Blazer, I'm going to tell you, of course, that she's the Senior Director of International Climate and Policy Campaign at the Sierra Club, which is a super important role, not just for us here locally, but globally. But when I tell you about how I know her, I'm going to tell you that she is an amazing and phenomenal, just energetic human being who is celebrating her birthday right now. And I missed her Goddess Day celebration. So we're going to have, our own little personal, party. But I know you'll be celebrating all month like we do.
Oh, yes.
But you have lots of cause to celebrate, right? Because of the victories that you have been able to put in place in this world, and I don't use the word world lightly, right? Like you not only come up with victories, closing coal plants and
yes.
Those kind of things here, but all over the world, and connecting those communities that you work in to let us share solutions, right? So this collective stewardship, you are a steward of our collective stewardship. And so I want to, acknowledge that and just to call that out in introducing you. And you can tell people all the other stuff, about you if you want to. But, I figure, we're the juice of the conversation.
Yes. Well, should I wait until we bring on the other folk, or?
No, say a little.
Oh, okay, I can say something. Okay. Yeah. So background is in atmospheric chemistry. Been an environmentalist all my life. It feels like, growing up here. I think everyone who lives here, to your point, and to what y'all have been talking about all week, if you live here at ground zero for the climate crisis and all the things that really all the issues that the rest of the world is going to be dealing with maybe in the next 10 years, we've been dealing with for the last 10 years and even longer. And so, yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm always looking for ways to apply my craft and my knowledge to the place that I love, where my family's from, all the people that I love live. And we are not powerless. So I'm so glad that we're having this conversation. I'm so glad that you're facilitating this, Asali. I can always count on you for taking care of all of us. So,
listen, the power is with us, right? We
yes.
claiming it, we proclaiming it, and we moving as if that is the case, because it is. And to that note, I also want to bring to the conversation at some point the Ancestor Festival that you co-produced this weekend, and why those kinds of conversations are intimately tied to our future, right? Like, so today's panel is about the present, but how do we use our present to create the kind of futures that the elders who gave the land acknowledgement called us to, right? And so on that note, because the power is with us, I want to bring in Flag Boy Giz of the Wild Chapatulas. There are those moments, in your life when so I'm gonna give an example. When I was young, I used to work on the Just Say No to Drug campaigns and stuff like that, spreading the knowledge and that kind of thing, with these stickers and all kind of little stuff that they would give us to influence our peers. But when Rebirth came out with Little Brother Leave That Pipe Alone, that was a better tool, all right, than any of the kinds of things that, federal government and agency people imagine for reaching our folks. And so, taking that lesson as a young person and, recognizing it throughout my life and career, when I heard Flag Boy Giz gentrify my city, right, that was another such a cultural moment for me, when our culture bearers are the people who are trusted messengers and, listen to us in community and are part of the innovations in community, create a work of art that captures, what it is that we're saying, what we're going through. I mean, and we do it all the time, but sometimes, it's just, it's a little groundbreaking. And that's how I feel. That's how I came to know Flag Boy Giz. I've come to know him, further since then as just a great cultural influencer and a thinker. And so happy to introduce him to this conversation. And tell us who you are, Flag Boy.
Thank you. Peace, Sister Asalia. Thank you for having me today. And nice to meet you, sister. Flag Boy Giz of the Wild Chapatulas. You've all New Orleanians know the Black Masking Indians and the history of what we do with our art. So I definitely try to make sure that every year with my art, I always try to have some sort of revolutionary scenery in all of my art. So even when it came time to continue the music, because I'm a member of the Wild Chapatulas, Black Masking Indians, I felt like it was time to do something new, and also I felt like when they first made these chants we sing in the street, these shallow water, oh mama, and when you're talking about just how much that song meant to slaves escaping in the bayous and things, like we still have to come up with current chants to address the issues that are going on in present time. So that's what I was doing. So thank you for acknowledging that, Sister Sally, with gentrifying the city. And I'm just here to, I'm also the creative designer of the Prince of Wales Social Aid and Pleasure Club. That's the second line clubs in the city. And so, yeah, I'm just here to provide my 2 cents in the conversation, and thank y'all.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And so next to the conversation, I want to introduce Bart Everson, who I have not yet had the pleasure in meeting in person. But when I read about his campaign for a council member at large, I was super excited, right? Because we don't really have much of a Green Party presence here. And I kind of feel like sometimes, I'm if any of you are Game of Thrones fans, I feel like I'm the first person that's seen the White Walker, and nobody don't want to believe me, and nobody don't want, get together and form the collaborations and do the hard work that's necessary to conquer our own nature that will let us fight the White Walker, right? But then there was Bart, right, with his campaign and calling to issue just stuff like we have to have policy solutions around these things, right? And nobody was speaking about these things with the urgency that I recognized in him. And so I'm real appreciative that even though he hasn't met me, he accepted the invitation to be here to have this conversation with you wonderful folks. So Bart, will you tell us a little about yourself?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. I'm so excited. accepted the invitation. I got to tell you, I am so honored to be here and so excited by this. I mean, what a righteous introduction. Not just the words you just said, but also the land acknowledgement, the art video of the dancers. I mean, they're checking all the boxes as far as I'm concerned. And it's true, I did just run for city council at large on specifically to bring attention to the climate crisis, but and in a way, I know it might seem like the Green Party has been keeping itself hidden here, but I came to New Orleans in 1999, so I'm a very recent arrival, right? I'm still arriving in some ways. But one of the first things I did was I got involved with a bunch of people who were trying to start a Green Party here. And one of the very first campaigns that I worked on a little bit was Malik Rahim, who former Black Panther Party, who ran as a Green Party candidate for the same office I just ran for 20 years ago. So I felt like I was following in Malik's footsteps. But as mentioned, I didn't grow up here. I came up in Indiana for most of my life. I lived one very formative year in northern Sweden up by the Arctic Circle. But I've been in New Orleans, I like to say, for 2 centuries now, since I got here in 1999. And I wear many different hats. I work at Xavier University. I've been there on staff. That's what brought me here. Just on staff. I don't actually teach classes or anything like that. I've been involved with the Green Party of Louisiana, the Greater New Orleans Interfaith Climate Coalition. The Green Party has mentioned the Friends of Lafitte Greenway, and just a number of organizations. And I'm an Earth worshiper. I try to center my life on Mother Earth.
Actually, well, thank you for saying that, and thank you for bringing up Baba Malik Rahim, who is a true friend and elder, community member of this organization as well, and often shares his knowledge with us in these kinds of forums, and definitely, has been a trailblazer, in this regard. So yes, thank you, and for also your connecting kind of work with different community partners, right? Like being a kind of connective tissue, for these issues in the city. And so speaking of connective tissues, an iconic connector in our city is the still honorable, always honorable, Oliver Thomas, who I came to know in my young adulthood. By the time I met Oliver, OT, as we call him, he was already a council member. And he was always accessible. He became my model for what I think a council member should be, right? Like, they don't just come to you during election, but for every issue, every issue where I felt like our voice as a young Black professional New Orleanian artist, trying to make my entree into to corporate structures, to cultural organizations, to political influence, he would carry that voice. And I knew that ours wasn't the only voice he was carrying, right? Because you could talk to anybody in community and know that OT checks in, with the people and brings their voice to bear, on the issues that we raise, right? And so knowing, that he is now poised to, re-enter into a policymaking responsibility in our city, and knowing the importance of this issue, like I mentioned, I think it's an existential threat. I think it is something that is shared in the community ethos and consciousness. When we did our community health impact assessment in regards to some other projects that we work on in the Claiborne corridor, one of the main three, fears, from folks, one, is cultural annihilation, right? Losing our culture. Number two is access to healthcare. And number three is climate injustice and the fear of a climate disaster or catastrophe that will eliminate our ability to remain in our homes, right? But those are not things, none of those three things are things that you often hear elevated to a policy level. And so that's why I want to focus tonight's conversation is around the policy prescriptions that should come, from the ground, from the earth, right? To the places, through the sausage making process, but, with real outcomes. I think that every policy that we create should have a lens of environmental equity and racial equity in it, period. But it's time for me to stop saying what I think and bring all of your brilliant minds to bear. So let's go at it. OT, tell us about it.
Well, first of all, thank you. I'll be brief, and I have two other appointments tonight, so that we can at least have the discussion. A couple of decades ago, I wrote a piece, and Asali, the other way we met, I was part of New Orleans Renaissance Poets back when I used to do a little spoken word in the lower Ninth Ward Nature Bar growing up.
That's right.
People are talking about resiliency, sustainability, and green, but as a kid growing up in the lower Nine, we had to do all that because we were that other part of the city. In one of the lines of the piece that I wrote for the original Earth Day here, we seem to complicate losing Louisiana, losing nature. And I thought, how could I simplify it? And in one of the verses of the poem I wrote, earth sustains life, no earth, no life. So it's actually really that simple. But also in the late 90s, when you talk about public policy, I remember the Christina Ford and the planning policy that talked about how do we build green, permeable concrete. If you're developing something, how do you actually have green space attached to it, which could actually reduce what we're doing here and with carbon and kind of begin to decarbonize the grid through developing and through building. We got away from that. So, I want to kind of get back to that on the policy side. But the other thing is there are anthropocenic models out there right now that talk about how we've gotten away from understanding or respecting the rights of nature. So as we move forward from a public policy in a political position, in a developing position, I think the only way we're going to survive, right? Because we can talk about resiliency, but really the word is sustainability, because we've always been resilient. So how do we create sustainable communities that respect the rights of nature, that give us a chance at some point to have a 600-year celebration? So I'll kind of cut it off with that so we can kind of flow.
Thank you, OT. Would anybody like to respond to that? How do we get to the 600-year celebration? How do we ensure? Because at the rate, of course, that we're losing Louisiana, right? We still, for one thing, we still use Arsene, I'm so crazy. I'm sorry. Arsene delay. Girl, please blame that on my memory and not my heart, my soul, or none of those things. So let me tell y'all real quick how I met Arsene. So through her work with the Musicians Clinic, and she has served as a panelist for us on other issues. But when what she brings to the conversation is such a common sense, realistic, household level. How do you make the kinds of changes, right? And she's so impactful in her way to get right to the heart of how we can really thrive inside of how and who we are. And so, thank you for that, Arsene, and please forgive me. All right.
I was like, man. Hi, y'all. It's lovely to see everyone's face. My name is Arsene Delay, and I am a singer, a songwriter, also the program manager of Making Groceries with the New Orleans Musicians Assistance Foundation that focuses on food equity for our cultural elders and musical and cultural elders, many who are immunocompromised. We we focus on trying to, well, not trying to, we bring them groceries every week, whole foods that will also assist in reducing the harm that our food insecurities brings. And also that food also helps them to reduce their their pre-existing conditions that have made it that have made such a deadly pandemic. And in my off time, I am also a climate activist. I've worked for several years with Waterwise Gulf South and Healthy Community Services, pushing for permeable pavement, for green infrastructure, and for stormwater management. And not just doing it on the policy level, but also teaching people how to actually do it in their houses, because everybody wants their car to survive a rain. Everybody wants their surroundings, their place to not flood whenever we have a rain event. So that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, and so to that point, Arsene, you know, that is something, of course, that the city should make sure of, right? Like should be part of the infrastructure. What are the kinds of solutions that where policy can meet neighborhood-based intervention?
Well,
Go ahead.
well, I was, I'm kind of pressed for time, and this.
Yeah, no apologies.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect place to start. We kind of deal with myths versus realities, because everyone talking about the North American grid and the Southern grid, right? Like it's just oil pipelines, gas lines, and electricity lines. But the grid is solar and wind and digital and the internet. So the grid. So how do we begin to transition from those fossil fuel lines as we decarbonize this community to develop the grid around those other things that create resilient and sustainable communities? So I think public policy let's take the whole discussion around energy, right? So why hasn't there been, whether you like energy or not, why hasn't there been an effort to take energy where it needs to be as it relates to this discussion, instead of them just maintaining and sustaining the delivery or talking about repairing America's grid for distribution of energy, right? Well, what about helping expand and create the other grid so that energy or any other company could be successful? So I think on the policy side and the political side, well, look, one of the worst things that's just happened with the city council was they allowed energy to put out their 4 points plan before they put one out to say, we want you to basically to answer our 4 points. They actually gave up the lead. So I think the discussion has to be around, what about the grid here? How do we create a grid that focuses on those other things that we're talking about here? And you can do that from a public policy side. Take the company where it needs to be in spite of itself, or another company will come in.
Well, and to your point, OT, the city council are the regulators. And so, and I don't accept that they have given up their lead, right? I call them to a higher standard. No, you don't get to give up your lead, because it is your responsibility to regulate the utility for us. And with that being said, Bart, if you would mind, like, giving some really kind of aspirational kind of solutions that we might not even be in the discussion in terms of city council for what their role could be, as OT said, in reimagining and reconfiguring Entergy for our needs as a city.
Well, thank you. As I've gone around talking for the last 17 weeks to people about how we put how we deal with this global problem at our extremely local level. To me, it boiled down to three things. And number one is holding Entergy accountable, as is mentioned, which before Hurricane Ida, it seemed like not too many people were talking about it. But after the storm, everybody was talking about it. And so, there's plenty to say there. I, in fact, had convened some meetings through the Green Party community meetings a couple years earlier. And no matter what we were talking about, grassroots democracy, nonviolence, social justice, it always seemed to come back to Entergy. it's all so that's definitely one of the deep issues that you can take a real deep dive on, because it's very technical. And the fact is that this extremely powerful corporation has kind of captured the city council. And that's
they have captured the city council. That is the problem.
That is the problem. But the other two things that I identified as kind of the key issues was number one, transit, improving transportation options around the city. And of all these three, this is the one that really seemed to catch fire with people, that people could relate to more. Because as we know, one of the key ways we consume energy and contribute to our carbon footprint and the climate crisis is moving things around, goods and people. So we all have to get around. So we need better ways to get around the city. In particular, I said I'm the only pro pothole candidate. Everybody is after these potholes. They're against potholes. I'm not really for potholes, but the fact is
people down.
we're too centered on the automobile, and we need to promote other ways of getting around. I'm a bicycle commuter myself, have been for 20 years, but what I really want to emphasize is public transit. We need to radically improve public transit. And so people really picked up and related to that. The third thing that was a little harder to communicate because it's so big is this idea of, as OT was saying, decarbonizing the local economy, or what we might call a Green New Deal for New Orleans, a Green New Orleans deal. If you look around the country, usually it's talked about at the federal level. If you look around the country, there's a number of cities and municipalities who have put their zone into action. Boston just has a Green New Deal, for example. You got New York, Seattle, Los Angeles. But what about the South? The American South is Southeast, part of the United States is just totally missing. So why shouldn't New Orleans be a leader here? And of course, we'd have to do things a little differently. And what I recommend is actually that we take a look at what's going on in Jackson, Mississippi, how they have, Cooperation Jackson, worker-led cooperatives. Because as we talk about getting our economy, our whole economy on another footing and implementing, these policies that will grow the economy in another direction. First of all, we need to get away from the idea that growth is always necessarily good, but we do need to shift the economy, right? Why not take this opportunity then to funnel that energy into a different form? Because the form of the for-profit, profit-driven corporation, the business that's going after the bottom line of the dollar, is what's gotten us into this mess. The idea of trying to extract maximum value from the land and from people and their labor is what's gotten us into this mess. So we need to look at other forms of organization. I mean, really, the climate crisis isn't, we have to acknowledge that the social order has failed us. So we need to look at other forms of social organization. It's a big idea. One we have to address.
Yeah, and well, it's a big idea, but one that data resoundingly echoes. And the reason that that won't be acknowledged, right, is that the communities where the most climate benefits happen are not the communities that experience the most climate deficits, right? Giz, I'd like to ask you how some of the solutions that Bart mentioned resonate with you.
Well, first, I was thinking about it from just how me and my friends, the natives, talk about bikes. Those, they hated the blue bikes. You know what I'm saying? But solution being, you have to have things like that in place to reduce our carbon footprint. I'm listening because, man, I feel blessed to have all these people who know so much about it. But yeah, that would probably be it. I just don't know. I mean, how many more buses you'd have to put out on a road, or you know what I'm saying, for it to really reduce that, or for it to be any kind of significant change. Because New Orleanians don't want to get caught in the rain. This is a city. It's a city where it rains and pours. You know what I'm saying? Like we were just talking about, it rains for an hour and it's flooding outside. So it's like how can we come up with something feasible for people going forward to have some transportation without it being, So I'm checking. I'm listening, but.
But these things are resonating with you, right? You
definitely
see the need for these solutions. And so OT, because I know you're pressed for time, I'd like to bring you back to the conversation for a second to talk about like what you would imagine, you know, as a route forward to bring like the kind of solutions that Bart is talking about and that Sherelle and Arsene are going to share to a place where as citizens we can make decisions about some of these big changes.
I think Bart said something that I speak about when I speak around this country about political order and social order. I said one of the problems we have is we have politics, business, and people are last. Okay, so when people are last, then the outcome for people is not first. But when Bart talked about the social order, Dr. Klein's book, The Shock Doctrine, talks about how disaster capitalism places value on our misery, the earth's misery, the war, the disaster. So at some point, there has to be a rebranding about the value of human life so that it means more than something bad, whether it's a natural disaster, war, or a conflict. So Bart, I think you're definitely spot on there. And then the other thing that has to happen is that we have to begin to, when you talk about Anthropocene and Anthropocenic models, how do we begin to insert the rights of the air, of the water, of the soil? How would you tell that to people in Cancer Alley, right? Those of us who grew up on toxic sites, Abundance, Gordon Plaza, parts of Central City, and urban communities throughout this country. So at some point, government officials and policy officials have to say that the most valuable thing that I have is this human life and the nature that sustains it. And for me, I think that's how, especially in the position of political leadership, you can begin to work with people like on this panel and talk about how do we begin to do that. Well, it's just like public transit, right? We do not have a regional or a public transit system that creates economic opportunities.
That's right.
Yeah.
In fact, it is intentionally designed to limit economic opportunities, right?
Well, it's been used in the region. In many cases, as much time is spent saying where folk can't go.
That's right. That's what I mean. And while spending those same folk money, right? So calling out some of these.
That goes back to the flip that Bart just said. There has to be a reemergence of in this American society where the most valuable thing you have is that life. Okay, and we ain't there now.
No, we're not there, and certainly could use some kind of global leadership in that regard. And I'm going to ask Sherelle to chime in here to maybe talk about some of the global examples, you know, places, one, where we could learn from, and also two, where we might be able to be a leader, because we are not just ground zero here in America, but we are ground zero globally for the levels of sea rise and different impacts, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would say, everyone in the world is grappling with the same issue, and we should be leading on this because we have the lived experience to be able to say what needs to happen. I agree with everything that's being said about having to decarbonize our economy. We cannot keep making money from the very things that are drowning us. We're going to have to find, not even have to find, we're going to have to implement and put money into industry that is going to keep us from, our bodies are on the line and our communities are on the line. And that really gets us into the idea of loss and damage and adaptation, which was one of those things at COP, at the UN, at the United Nations Climate Summit. Which is called COP26 this past past week, was one of the things that we couldn't really move forward on. In fact, just being able to name it and say that we were going to get to it was considered progress. But that's because America was blocking it in all the negotiations. The United States was blocking anything moving forward on adaptation, loss, and damage. And, here we're calling it resilience because adaptation, loss, and damage implies responsibility, right? The developed world that has made billions of dollars and set up their economies and everything about, and set up their economies on fossil fuels now owes everyone else for the climate crisis that we have put onto the rest of the world. right? So adaptation, either building levees, right? Building something. Loss and damage, if you're losing your land, if you have to rebuild every single year, if you have to, if your schools are falling apart and, you're going underwater, loss and damage, that's all really global reparations. And it's not even something that we talk about in the United States, right? All we talk about here is resilience. And that's because it puts all the onus back on the injured party.
On the injured party, that's right.
And that's what, yeah, I'll leave it there.
No, we're gonna bring it back in, but I want to ask Arsena to chime in on that. So, because you work so closely with neighborhoods and communities on this issue, right? What are the kind of tools that could be helpful for you to talk about adaptation, loss, and damage? What do you think it would mean for the people that you serve to know, right, that they have a right to those things, to know that they have a right to speak on behalf of the air and the land and speak up for the air and the land in their communities, right? What could you imagine?
If people knew that they had agency over their environment, I think we would be in a much different place. But so many people don't, they don't even know. They don't even know where to start. It's such an overwhelming task at hand. And, on top of that, we are in the bedrock. This is ground zero of where plantation economics was born, and capital, and what we're seeing now in the late stages of it is it is coming back to kill its maker, in essence. And it is, we are seeing that it is not sustainable. And even though some of that stuff is brought on by us, it's Mother Earth that's saying, nah, because this is everything has a balance. Everything has a balance. And that's what's happening right now. And we're going to be the ones who are suffering from it the more we continue to ignore this. The more that we continue to destroy the soil, the more that we continue to forget that all of this is connected. All of it is connected with the gentrification, capitalism, the constant taking.
But Sally, before I go,
people wanting to move away.
I'm gonna bring you in, Baba. Okay. Arsen, you have a little bit of a glitch, and so
still there.
Yeah,
okay.
And so while you figure that out, no, just let me let OT say something before he has to go, and I want to bring you back in to finish that point. So, Baba, with what Arsen is just speaking of, and what you heard everybody speak of, what can you imagine as a kind of radical agenda that we as citizens can bring to our elected officials to advance this in a big way?
Well, it doesn't have to be radical, because it's the only way we're going to survive. America's never going to come up with enough money to fix all of these old systems and old infrastructure that has been broken. Even with the multi-trillion-dollar bill, that's not anything. That's not enough money to fix America's 100-plus-year-old infrastructure. I think that we have an opportunity here, especially with the Biden $110 billion solar wind initiative, the $55 billion solar initiative. I think we can begin planning, hopefully from the state down, the legislature, our mayor, our city council, our agency leaders here, to begin to say, how do we take advantage of that?
But Bobby, let me just interrupt you for just a quick second and push back a little bit on the radical. And the reason I say radical is because this is an urgency. I don't think it's being acknowledged. These things when we're talking about starting planning, like they told us 20 years ago, you only got this long. And so now we're at the point where really we have 3 to 5 years to make radical interventions that would mitigate some of these climate impacts that we are going to have, and that could potentially help us to save the land where we won't all have to move, because that's the real reality we're facing.
Well, tell the people in Isle de Jean Charles that it's not radical. So I understand that the Native American community there, that's lost 98% of their homes. So, but I mean, in terms of how we think, is something that we have to do. So, I mean, so how do we begin to adjust to take advantage of the Biden initiatives, right? I look at the Lower Ninth Ward as a perfect sustainable community with what's happening with Bayou Bienvenue, Sankofa. Our topography here fits the resiliency model is probably better than any place in the country. Gentilly got $144 million for that resiliency grant. Well, New Orleans East and on out to Fort Pike and Lake Catherine and Bayou Sauvage, the largest national wildlife reserve in America with Indian burial grounds and 9.5 miles of waterway, actually creates an even stronger natural economic opportunity than the $144 million that they got in Gentilly. So
well, let me just point out real quick. So Gentilly was supposed to have 232 million. All of the money was supposed to go to Black businesses, who were supposed to be primed to respond to the business opportunities, to be able to have the nurseries, that all of the procurement that was supposed to be inside of that climate initiative was all supposed to go 100% to go to Black businesses, along with some other green workforce development. And you know how I know? Because I helped write it. So can't nobody tell me different. Right. And then none of that was done when it came down to implementation. How do we hold people in our government, in our legislators, our administrators accountable to those kinds of miscarriages of justice that they still like to portray as if it's a success?
Have all of you guys have sat down with an elected official to talk to them about complicated and not so complicated stuff? And they're trying hard to show you that they know, but they have their faraway looking eye. They don't know a damn thing about what you're talking about. At some point, policymakers, if they're not going to surround themselves with the best experts, because experts, it all depends on who you're paying, with the best experts around them, they're going to have to begin to learn about from crime to economic development to saving our land, to saving our environment. They're going to have to begin to educate themselves about how they can help and insert themselves. One of the major problems with Entergy is that you don't have any institutional knowledge up there for folk who understand the history of from NOPSI to what we have right now and the promises that were made that got us to where we are. So, let's hope. We really need to have this discussion, because I think it's one of the most important discussions of our time, because we have lost a whole lot of our civilization here south of us already. So if we don't, it's going to
take public pressure.
Absolutely.
It's going to take taking it to the street. It's going
Absolutely.
to take, as long as we're not just talking about it, but not that this isn't.
Let me just say, OT, whenever you need to cut out, you can go
I'm so
ahead and
sorry.
cut out, and we're going to continue to talk.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for your contribution and for your willingness to follow up on this, because we will be following.
Yes.
Thank you, Barbara. Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be good policy coming forward, but then it also has to be, our lives and our bodies and our communities are already on the line. It's got to be people willing to put themselves out there and demonstrate to policymakers how serious this is for us, how important this is for us, because we just went through Ida, and honestly, I don't know what is really going to change. Like the sooner we can get back to normal, the sooner they really just keep acting like what happened didn't happen. And so, we have to stop behaving as if the status quo is okay. We're gonna have to make people uncomfortable.
I would like to ask Giz on that note. What are the kinds of things that you could imagine would make culture bearers and artists not just encouraged, but motivated to bring the kind of pressure that Sherelle, that Arsene, are talking about, like to get to the kinds of solutions that Bart and OT are talking about, and knowing what's at stake and knowing what gets lost on a daily basis, that our folks are not responsible for. How can we as culture bearers hold them responsible?
Well, hold them responsible or just educate them on what's happening? Because
I say some of both. I say some of both. Because once you know better, you should be inclined to do better, right?
Yeah, and I believe that too. And I think a lot of it comes from actually informing them on what's going on. Like I know I've looked at different maps where they say in 300 years we may not have New Orleans. So I've looked at that, and I've been trying to, do my part so that, my ancestors, descendants, my descendants have a New Orleans. Hopefully, if they're still in New Orleans, But it's I don't know how we could show how actual the culture is being affected by it. I know for a fact, I know a lot of guys who mask as Indians who just because of gentrification like live in Slidell. And so we just the whole term of having U-Haul Indians. We don't even have the cultural barrels coming out of our same neighborhoods anymore.
Wow,
You know
come
what I'm
on,
saying?
keep on that.
Because we don't, I put my stuff on in the neighborhood and walk through the city with it. Like I don't catch a car. You know what I'm saying? Over there. So it's just that right there's an issue. That right there is an issue. But to say how can we get them to see, that's another angle at it. I never thought of that, of how to.
Yeah, but if they understood the connection, right, between the loss of their home and the loss of their, neighborhood and that environment with, these policies, right, that are happening, I think we could really create something, kind of cataclysmic.
And that's something maybe I may address it. Like that's something I do like through my artwork. Usually that's how I kind of try to just address anything I feel going on at the moment, suit to suit, year to year. But I don't know how to educate all the Black Masking Indians or the Second Line Club members or the Baby Dolls or the Skull and Bones on what's going on. But
we could talk about how to do it, right? Because I bet Arsene has some solutions about that.
Oh, please believe my entire crib. My entire crib knows about this. Like, and the thing is, yes, through artwork in the suits, absolutely. Also, making sure that you have these conversations too, because that part is so important right now. Making sure that you're having the conversations, leading by example. Wait, where are y'all here? Because I can't see anybody.
We are. I think they switched the camera to whoever's.
Okay. I'm sorry. I was like, ah! Look. So my bad. I know. I'm like, why do I just see my face? Stop. But ultimately, no. We have to have the conversations because things are not going to change until the critical mass gives a damn, and we cannot wait. And it's very, very difficult because I swear. We've been in survival mode and nobody is interested in attempting to try and creatively problem solve when everybody has been in survival mode continuously traumatized too. Because we just went through Ida and I'm sitting here having conversations and they're talking about the storm and I'm like, wait a minute, which storm? Is it Ida or Katrina? Or is it this one or is it that one?
Yeah.
Because now in the last 16 years, on the same day, we've had a storm on the same day. On August 28th, we have had now at least 3 to 4 storms in the last 16 years. And this stuff is very, very real. It is very, very in our faces. And when I'm out here, like I started by example. So when I started learning about water management, the modus for that was August 25th, Satchmo Fest 2017, when me in the 7th Ward having to take my show shoes off after treading through water, trying to get home from a gig and trying to cross Claiborne.
All the way up down St. Bernard.
And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, exactly. I was like, wait a minute. I'm on the high part of town.
High ground. Yep.
So if I'm in the high ground. So if this is the case here, then my people in Gentilly, my people in Mid-City, I'm like, they're in trouble. And that was just a rain. We had 7 inches of rain fall in a matter of 4.5 to 5 hours that day.
And that's going to be a more regular rain event.
Well, it already has. We had, remember, there was a rain event 2 days before Ida. I was stuck on one side of town because I had to wait for the water to go down. And all of us were sitting here like, oh Lord, what are we going to do? Like, is things going to stay dry? Because all of a sudden this storm came, in a matter of days, came in hot.
Yeah, and so on that note, though, so Sherelle and Bart, let me ask you, because I read an article recently that talked about, like really drastic measures that humanity truly needs to take in order to address the climate change and not to have the however many temperature degree rise, right? That
over 1.5.
that is pending. Yeah. And I'm talking about things like we need to go down to 7,500 kilowatt hours per person per year, where currently Americans use over 100,000, right? Yeah. So just conceptualizing the average person, can you imagine reducing your electric usage, right now by that amount, and stuff like, only certain amount of square footage per person. A household would limit their electronics to like one phone per adult and one laptop for the whole household. Now, like these are all like kind of personal responsibility, uncomfortable.
Well, here's the thing. Kind of thing. I mean, Bart, you can tell. I mean, jump in here and talk with me. You don't have to like wait till I finish.
Yeah.
But, I mean, here's the thing. That does get on personal responsibility, and those kinds of articles. It's kind of like the thing with the straws. Are we telling petrochemical companies that they can't run the kind of industry that they're running? No, we're like, drink out of a paper straw. I mean, yeah, sure. One phone for the whole household.
Yeah.
Or we could have utility scale solar and wind, or we could have distributive community solar, and we could also have energy efficiency programs. There's so many solutions that exist. And I know, Bart, you're feeling me on this, so hop in.
Yeah, absolutely.
But all of the solutions are known. That's what's so infuriating about it.
And they're already being implemented too.
They
already are being intimated. But they're also, here's the thing though, because they're also being implemented here. It's just that the people with money who could actually help everyone else go from survival to all of that.
That's why it can't be left up to market.
Eco-apartheid, girl, I'm gonna use that one.
Eco-apartheid is not an option.
Consumerism is never going to get us there, right? So we need collective solutions for sure. And that's one reason, for example, I think that it might be controversial, but I think we need to put a price on carbon, which would have overall long-term would get us to the place that we need to get. But there's no doubt that we need to live more lightly on the earth. And that is going to require a different way of living. And where do we get the motivation to accept that? Well, it's a spiritual journey. And that's something that I think has been very near to my heart when I said I was an earth worshiper before, that I try to honor Gaia. And it's something that I think on the next panel later tonight, we'll be hearing from Pastor Gregory Manning. I've done a lot of work with him, and I really respect how he's trying to bring forward that. And I think for arts and culture, it's got to tap into that spirituality, that earth spirituality. That's how we reach people and help people understand and accept the new realities that are emerging, or the old reality that's coming back.
And there's not a more soulful place I know than New Orleans. So we got that in spades.
Also, I mean, I am a big, slowing down will make the quality of your life better. It really will. And I think, we need to have, in this particular lane of it, we need to address grind culture. We need to address the grind, because the grind is what is doing that. And the grind is literally killing us.
The grind culture and the gig economy, right? Like combined.
And the gig economy, it is killing us. I mean, as a musician, I'm like, look, New Orleans music is the new cotton, because they be wanting us to grind out here, and especially in this pandemic, literally to our own, to the own detriment of our health. You know, that part right there is like, we have to stop the grind, because money is not the God that we need to be worshiping.
That's right.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm saying, and to your point, and the power is with us, right? To be able to make those those kind of demands and those changes. And so I want to first thank Bart for bringing me back to the reality that there is another panel, that we're not just like chilling on my Zoom, having a great conversation that we could carry on for as long as we want to, even though I'm going to make some space for that if y'all about it. But right now, I would like each of you to just give some like closing thoughts and motivations, or even maybe some action items for how we move forward together, because I will make a commitment to continuing this conversation on a community, wide level. Like by the time we do Losing Louisiana next year, what are some things that we will have accomplished, knowing that the power is with us?
Thank you. Let me just say that Katrina should have been our wake-up call. Ida absolutely has to be our wake-up call. Mm-hmm. We have to be fully engaged, and we have to hold our elected officials responsible. So I call on JP Morrell, Elena Moreno, Joe Giarrusso, and whoever comes out of this runoff in all the other district council races to really maximally use their authority, their regulatory authority over Entergy, to bring us cleaner energy. And of course, everybody wants to hold the rates down, but more than anything else, we need to hold Entergy.
Yes, thank you, Bart. Who's next? I'm writing these down. So we're gonna blow them. You know what I'm saying?
I'll go. If we heal the soil, we fix the problem. That is the biggest. The soil is the biggest holder of carbon that we have. And if we really, we're talking about all of this money coming in for infrastructure. If we use that to actually implement green infrastructure to get rid of our serious concrete problem in this city and actually implement green infrastructure, not only can we handle stormwater management, we don't have to rely on sewage and water board and their ancient drainage practices or their deeply neglected drainage system. But we can also address the other issues that I end up fighting with city council about, including noise ordinances, because the more green stuff you have there, there's actually a way to landscape that can actually reduce noise, so that we can have all of our practices and music and stuff like that. People can also it doesn't have to be an assault on anybody's ears or anything else like that. We don't have to worry about we can greatly reduce the noise pollution. But it's as simple as
I love your grace in that, because I just have to assert that there is no noise pollution in New Orleans. But go ahead.
Well, no, there is when it comes to us living out loud. That's one thing. Yeah. But pilings going down until 3 or 4 a.m. That is definitely.
No, I thought you were talking about. I thought you were talking about some of these quiet zones. Folks are trying to say.
No. Girl, I'm a musician. I ain't trying to play that. And whenever I rehearse in my house, my neighbors.
Come on, I bring that on. I want to hear that.
No, my neighbors are out on the porch. They're like, "Ooh, I like that one."
Yeah, because you're healing the earth with your sounds and your music, right?
Exactly, but no, there is there is noise pollution, and we can fix on that. But on top of that, implementing the green infrastructure, it does all of those things. Plus, we don't lose cars, we don't sit here and have more damage to our houses, and if we do that, the rain is not going to be falling as hard as it is now.
Ashe. Giz, what you got?
Man, it's hard coming behind Bart and Austin. It's I think they kind of touched on everything, but just we have to respect the land and make sure that we're not leaving impacting our land negatively. There's gonna be a New Orleans after all of us, so we all have that responsibility. So just making sure going forward that I guess we got to put pressure on those council members and to make sure that the people and the value of life is over $1.
That's right. Putting the people first, putting the pressure to put the people first. Yeah, y'all list is fire. All right, Sherelle, what you got?
Well, so I am actually pushing the Biden administration to put forth some adaptation and loss and damage and migration, all those kinds of policies. One of the problems is we don't have a policy around that in the U.S., and so then we can't participate in it globally also. So there's a lot of work that needs to happen there because, again, we're not talking about losing Louisiana in the next 300 years. We're actually talking about 20 years. We're actually talking about in our lifetime.
Or less,
And we're already seeing it happen. And so it's kind of time out for some foolishness. That's exactly how I talk to the U.S. negotiators. It's time out for some foolishness, and and pushing that policy. And
is that a place where New Orleans could lead? Can we create like an adaptation, loss, and damage policy that comes from the people that like we can convene each other around like what that would look like here, and then get our council people on board, and then from there our Congress people? Is that something we could do, y'all?
Yes, the answer right now. But see, what the U.S. will tell us is that is FEMA.
No, okay. Well, tell me that. Tell me that's FEMA. Show me where that's FEMA. Come on. Show me where it says. Show me where that's FEMA. Show me where what we're asking for is inside of FEMA, and then I'm happy to put the pressure on FEMA. But for now, right?
That's right. No, let's keep coordinating on this.
Keep
coordinating on this. Yeah.
All right. So look, I gotta let this panel go. I hate to let y'all go. I feel so close to y'all. I feel like we all got some mission and work to do together. So and I always love these conversations throughout the Losing Louisiana series. I hope that all of you all who are listening are able to tune in and continue to bring your energy and your questions to this conversation. And we are committed to making it a community conversation that brings all parts of our community together around this solution, because we all are needed. And the power is with us. So thank you deeply to each and every one of our panelists, and to each and every one of our participants in this conversation, and give thanks. Now, if y'all don't take me off, I'm gonna keep talking. Hey, Mama Jamila. It's Sisters Making a Change is in the building tonight, and I'm all up in their space and time. So I'm out.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all the panelists. We so appreciate it. What a spirited conversation. I think we did actually get a phenomenal list of things that we could take from this. We have another panel coming up, y'all. But before we do that, I like to add a little flavor. So here's something from Junebug Productions that was put to us by the Homecoming Project Water Series. Sister Keisha McKee and a phenomenal artist, Free for All.
Running, flowing, splashing. It's in me, it's a part of me. It's been here before. Oh, it's in me, it's a part of me. It's been here before. It's been here before. See, it's in me, it's a part of me. It's been here before. Oh, it's in me, it's a part of me. It's been here before. Flowing in me, running through me, washing over me.
came back to
As mother of the planet's living things, holding memory and mystery, healing flesh and rock, carving veins in mountainsides, water is the great collector, down to the molecular level. A somehow stable congregation of charged particles, positive and negative, held together by polarity as cells of an ever-decaying, ever-regenerating body. This polarity makes the molecules thirsty, makes them suck in salt and strip it down for parts, holding sodium and chloride apart, limbs bound, tongues cut out, bouncing and bobbing in darkness between charges through the vast glass fabric of the sea until they come to find again their familiar chemistry on the shores of some land they never imagined, restored by the light of the sun. Sounds barbaric, but do not hold this behavior against your mother. It is not her fault, only her nature. She must take and hold what comes to her and does not cut its way by gravity to the ground. She can be so nourishing, exalting what little things we make and are, her body a museum, a lost and found, here a bottle, there a hollow log, particles, pebbles, shipping vessels, messages, memory.
Deep gratitude again to Junebug Productions for that phenomenal video. And that was an excerpt from Homecoming Project Water featuring Free For All. The words you heard were Free For All, and Sister Keisha McKee, who is the Director of Arts at the NOCA Foundation, at the NOCA School of the Arts. Let me, for a moment, also just give thanks to that panel again. I mean, I was sitting here making my notes. I know Asali was making some notes, but we lead right into another piece that I hope to be just as, I know will be as equally as innovative, as equally as informative. And it's going to be led this evening by Carol Sloan Bookbinder, who is has been with the Ashe Cultural Law Center for so many years, as many things, as an assistant producer, as our creative liaison for Side by Side, for so many things she does. And also Carol is a playwright, an author, an actor, a filmmaker, a painter. She does it all and she does it well. So I'll bring her in right now to assist with this conversation. Hey, Carol, how are you?
Hi, Wood. Well, thank you for that amazing introduction. That's beautiful.
My pleasure. I'm handing over the reins.
Thank you. It's what a very inspiring panel that was. It was about public policy and what we can do. And Asali is a fierce leader. And I know now that she is thinking about convening people to discuss how can we write policy, that's going to be happening. I know it. Just a matter of time. And time is something that we don't have a lot of at this moment. So tonight's focus is current conditions. And I am delighted to have several people with me that I'd like to bring into the room so that we can meet them and see them. So Wood, if you could bring in our esteemed guests, that would be fabulous. Wonderful. So I would like to welcome Pastor Greg Manning, Chair and Founder of the New Orleans Interfaith Climate Coalition, Facilitator for Coalition Against Death Alley, Co-Moderator for Justice and Beyond, and pastor of Broadmoor Community Church. And Monique Hardin, who's the Assistant Director of Law and Public Policy and Community Engagement Program Manager for Deep South Center for Environmental Justice. And Pat Bryant, co-founder of the New Orleans-based civil rights group Justice and Beyond, and a member of the Coalition Against Death Alley. And so tonight our focus is current conditions, and we've talked a lot about policy and the policies that need to happen. And you all three of you have been doing tremendous amounts of work in that area for years. And so I would like to also explore in this panel how our region, how New Orleans connects to St. James Parish. Specifically, how does the work in New Orleans on environmental racism and injustice connect with the work in St. James Parish, where the residents are also combating injustice and environmental racism? So, volume, Pastor Manning.
Okay, volume, or am I muted?
Now we go. Now we can hear you. Oh, now you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, very good. Do you want me to kick it off, or was there more?
No, that's our first question.
Okay.
Yes, and if Pastor Manning, if you could offer your insight in that area to begin with.
Yeah, first of all, thank you. I very much enjoyed listening to the first set of panelists, and I'm honored to be here tonight. So thank you all, and just great always to be on a panel with Mr. Pat Bryant and with Monique Hardin as well. We Pat and I led a march a couple of years ago that was very intentional about illustrating that Death Alley, also known by some as Cancer Alley, but deemed and termed by us as Death Alley, because people are not only dying from cancer, but so many other morbidities that are causing death, and that is not only happening in St. James, slow death, but also happening in Orleans Parish. So we led that march in order to illustrate to people that is really happening from Orleans all along to Baton Rouge. And so happening when we look at the residents of Gordon Plaza and looking at those in Chalmette, looking at those in New Orleans East who are victims of the gas plant that never should have been put out there. It's all interconnected and all slowly causing death, but also at the same time showing that we are not taking this climate crisis as seriously as we need to at this very moment.
Thank you, Pastor Manning. Pat Bryant, would you, how do you see the interconnection between New Orleans and St. James Parish and the work that you've been doing for decades? Oh, technology. Well, we hope that he returns very soon. And in the meantime, Monique Hardin has been doing a lot of work around policy, and especially with the gas plant in New Orleans East. And how do you see the interconnection between your work and the work of Pastor Manning, the advocacy?
Well, a lot of people may not know who have, gotten to know me in the more recent fight against the Entergy gas plant in New Orleans East, that one of my first, but my first immersion in the movement for environmental justice was in St. James Parish. It was a fight against the Shintech Corporation that had the blessings of then Governor Mike Foster to build what was claimed to be the largest polyvinyl chloride complex in the world, would be on this site near Black residents in St. James Parish in the town of Convent, Louisiana. And the residents really organized and pushed back under the banner cry of enough is enough, where at the time, there was some 17 million pounds of air pollution released by existing industrial facilities that would just be, further mushroom with the pollution output that would come with the Shintech facility that was planning to get the permits to build and operate right next to them, and further, drive environmental racism that they were dealing with. Residents in St. James Parish and Common came together under the organization they founded called St. James Citizens for Jobs in the Environment. And, incredible leaders like Imelda West, who happens to be a cousin of Sharon Levine, who's now leading Rise St. James now, was just, this galvanizing force and fighting against environmental racism and what it meant and what it was doing to her community where she grew up, and saw just the devastating effects of industrial pollution, on the things that made her community beautiful. So, taking away the ability to grow trees and plants that could not live and survive with that pollution level, seeing children suffer from asthma, nosebleeds, and doctors, prescribing more and more medications to households up and down the river along in the town of Convent for, a host of diseases that are supposed to be rare, but everyone under a roof has it. And then, of course, cancers. And so this was a fight that they saw as if they allow this to happen, what would the future mean? And so they really stood up. And, I was a young lawyer, just graduated from law school, was working with an environmental organization, and came to be in service of St. James Citizens for Jobs in the Environment, which resulted in the group really amassing tremendous amount of solidarity and support around the country and even the world, but also achieving the first ever decision from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to deny a state issued air permit. And this one, of course, coming from the Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality, and doing that with the on the grounds that it violated not only the Clean Air Act, but also triggered the agency, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, to conduct a civil rights investigation on the agency here in the state of Louisiana. And with that, the plans that were put forward, the hubris that came with it, statements from the Shintech vice president, I remember his name was Irv Schroeder, who said when they decided to locate right next to Burton Lane, where children were on bicycles, people lived, that they quote unquote did not see people, evoking, the invisible man, Ralph Ellison, like Black people are invisible to them. Just all of that went away. And it came really from that grounded community organizing where people stood up for themselves in defense of their community to say enough is enough. And I gotta say, in terms of the connections for me in New Orleans, it was really profound because, I grew up in New Orleans, lived my, went away for, college and law school, came back to my city, and never ever saw the way in which people outside of the city lived. In places like St. James Parish, where you have modest homes, right, under these towering industrial smokestacks and facilities and storage tanks that just don't end. And there's something about traveling to and from New Orleans and around is that interstate, you don't see it, right? You don't see the people and the polluting facilities and the companies. You drive by it, it's kind of away from you. And so it was a little bit of shame that I had when beginning work, is that how I could live my entire life to adulthood, young adult, and never know that this was happening just like 40 minutes of drive time away from where I live. So while there's a definite connection historically and currently in terms of we're part of Cancer Alley, this is the, a step after slavery and what that meant up and down the river parishes where people fought for freedom against that oppression, and the slave revolt coming out of St. Charles Parish into New Orleans. All of that history and all of that, I think, is extremely important. And knowing that connection is important, because if St. James Parish is allowed to persist under industrial repression and that stronghold that they have with the environmental racism, it's not just limited to St. James Parish. It's all of us are under that. And, case in point, the way in which New Orleans reflects that of a company town when it comes to energy, right? And so we're reminded over and over again, if you're really paying close attention, the way in which industrial companies have just, have our policies, funding budgets really by the neck. And it's something that, understanding those connections, I'm glad you opened with that question. It's extremely important to realize that the fight in St. James Parish, the fight in New Orleans, it's one fight, and it's a global fight as well. So
yes.
And if I could add to that, I didn't want to speak too much because I was trying to leave room for everybody else, and so Pat not being here gave a little bit more time. Carol,
you're so polite.
Oh no, I want you to build, because you're also, the next question I was going to ask was about victories, and you've already started speaking about those too, because yes, this is an interconnected struggle, not only with our own communities and other parishes, but with the whole world. And as they pointed out in the previous panel, we are ground zero. That's right. For many things. Yeah. And so the victory part is very important. And I would like you, yes, Pastor Manning, please continue with what you were about to say.
Well, what I was going to say too is that, the whole modus operandi of those who have ownership and have wealth and have possession and are the ones perpetrating this environmental racism do it by dividing and conquering, and part of that is to make us think that these imaginary borders are real. So the connection really comes when we begin to understand that those in St. James are drinking the same water that we're being provided by the Mississippi River, and breathing the same air that we're also breathing. There is no dome over St. James or even St. John Parish or Orleans Parish that keeps us separated. And that's the lie that they want us to believe, that it is not coming to us. It is we're all part of humanity that is dealing with the same thing and living off the same land. And so we cannot fall victim to that lie that as Monique said, one of the things we try to make sure that we make people understand within the Coalition Against Death Valley, we carry this picture called Grandma and the Baby, where we illustrate that there's grandma sitting on the porch, and there's this petrochemical industry that has been built right behind her, and that has become her neighbor. She's just trying to live and sustain her life and her family, but her neighbor has become this foul company that is killing her slowly. And what we have to understand is that St. James folks are our neighbors. And as a minister, we have to understand that we have to illustrate care for our neighbor. I think that one of the biggest victories to move into that is the mobilization of people doing grassroots organizing and raising up people who have been felt and called by God to use their divine voices and their power to be able to move mountains. And one of those people is Miss Sharon Levine, as Monique mentioned her as well too, but who first came to Justice and Beyond about 3 years ago now and said, we need help. We've got a few women that are helping us to fight Formosa, but we need your backing and your help. And we said at that time, we're going to back them. We're going to support them. We're going to do all that we can to empower them. Miss Sharon Levine has just risen and just done a phenomenal job. But it's people like her realizing that they do not have to stand silent and fall victim to what the industry is doing to them and just sit down and surrender. But they can get in the streets, yell and scream, get on bullhorns, and show up at meetings and make a huge noise about what's going on and then mobilize others to do the same. I think that's the victory in the training, in the empowerment, in the mobilization of people. Same way with that New Orleans gas plant in the East. Monique, you know as well as I do, we had people that filled up city council meetings, that were there, who were had never shown up for city council before, but were there and willing to expose Entergy for their lies and what they were doing, especially with those paid actors.
Yes. Oh, Pat Bryant, we're so glad that you're able to join us. We would love to hear from you about, you've been doing years and years of activism, and we're also talking about victories, and we know that you've had those as well. So we would love to hear your words.
Well, I want to congratulate Ashe for inviting us all here to be a part of this conversation. And hopefully they will continue it. I want to be very clear that we have been scratching the surface and doing a good job at that. But I believe that if we're talking about making a change, we got to be real about the change that we seek. We got to, understand that Entergy and all of these other utility companies in the country and around the world have a lock on power. They have a lock on decision-making process. And it's about furtherance of capitalism. Now, we have a good chance to get some policymakers to hold Entergy accountable in the years that are coming up. And I'm excited about that. But we have to define the fight that we're in. And we need the artist. We need to be led and joined by the artists, because the artists have a clearer message. I'll never forget when John O'Neill and Kalama Yasalam coordinated on the Breath of Life. It was a very clear statement of what was happening up and down the river, that they exposed the lives that people were living under the chemical companies. And I was encouraged by the inclusion in recent organizing of artists like Baba Luther Gray and artists like Dow Edwards and many others in the organizing that was going around to save Congo Square from the mayor and Gail Benson. Now, we have to organize in the culture. And if we have kind of done it spotted organizing in the culture as best we can with the resources that we have. But now we're linked with the cultural resource in New Orleans, and we are focused on our survival against Entergy, a corporation that has raped and pillaged and continues to rape and pillage. And there needs to be a song. There needs to be some lyrics. There needs to be some education that takes off and leads us. And I'm sure that a collaboration between Cyril Neville and Ashe can wrap up all the stuff we've been going through for the last several years. A collaboration that brings in the artists like Sheila Pips, who did Grandma and the Baby. I talked to Sheila recently. She's willing to get in this fight and get down deep. And Grandma and the Baby, I don't think we've actually done as much as we can. I think we need to roll with Grandma and the Baby still. And we need to work. What I'm in short, we need the artists. They need us. The community need us and the artists working together. And I think if we can just sit down and figure out how that happens, who was it? Donald Harrison did jingles and music for the Recycle campaign back in 2003. I mean, he had all of the kids in the city said, drop it in the trash can. And they were dancing to this music. It was a phenomenal thing. If we just take the time to get the artists involved and leading, not as an add-on. The artists have to be brought in when we're talking about the real decisions. And I'm just so happy to be in New Orleans. I'm so happy to be a part of this culture. And the crisis at hand seems overwhelming. But with the artists involved, with the artists helping to lead, we're going to go someplace.
Yes. And I think tonight is one of the places of beginnings. The previous panel especially talked about what policies we can create. Engaging artists, absolutely yes, because we help people see things that when a narrative comes out, people can comprehend, where if you just show them a bunch of statistics or even talk about like in language that is scientific, people shut down and they no longer hear. And so I think that that's a challenge that we need to begin to look at because we don't have time. I know there's a renewable energy portfolio, which is pretty amazing, right? New Orleans has this energy portfolio that no other place in the Deep South has, but it still has a 29-year trajectory. And that's in the best scenario. And we don't have 29 years.
Nope.
We've got a very, very short amount of time. And they used the word radical in the last panel as well. We need a radical shift.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We cannot be, my concern is that we cannot be radical enough at this point. Carol, you said that exactly. We are beyond what I have begun to say is that we keep saying, using this term, climate change. We need to add a D onto that. We are climate changed city. As Ida, I think, has made that very, very clear, but we are a climate change city and we need to behave in that manner. I believe that our present city council has dragged their feet, and we need a new city council that shows complete urgency, even beyond urgency, in making sure that we're moving towards solar and battery storage within our city everywhere we look.
Yeah, we need to break the lock.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, and it can happen. It can really happen, but we got to collaborate with those people who have the critical genius. And artists have genius about communication. If we can get the words and the music and all of that together, and people on with doing it graphically, I'm telling you, we can move mountains quickly. And we can be a model for the world. You got to have the artist leading and involved, and because they like you said, they communicate better than anybody else.
Yes. And I think the beginning, this is our goal is to continue this so that by the time next year, when we have Losing Louisiana again, that we're going to have reclaimed Louisiana in several different areas. That is our plan for the coming months. And we really need to, if everyone started singing a jingle about recycling, or if everyone started singing a jingle, because people showed up, as you indicated, Pastor Manning, and you also, Monique Harden, people were coming to the meetings in City Council. They were speaking about things. So there is an understanding of what's happening. There is a desire to make the shift happen, and helping people connect to their power. Part of that is the creativity. If a person isn't connected to their creativity, they are not going to thrive, and they're not going to believe, they're not going to understand their power, that they have a tremendous amount of power to shift. Especially, we are one of only 2 places in the United States where technically us, just this average citizen, is what is controlling energy. That's on paper. It's not the reality, but what's on paper is because we elect City Council, and City Council regulates our utility. And that's a tremendous opportunity for us if we can come to a place of understanding that this is happening.
Entity is they're in a crisis mode. I mean, they're killing each other over there. They're blaming each other over there. They're thinking, and rightly so, that they're going to lose this golden egg that they got, which is New Orleans. And that's going to happen. We just need to get our act together. We stand in the way of the change that we seek. We need to get out of the way and make the circle larger, like did in the organizing around Congo Square. That should be a model for us. We need to get the drummers, Baba Luther, in the heart of this conversation. We need to get those Mardi Gras, the Indians. They don't like to be called Mardi Gras, but the Indians, we need to get them involved in this conversation. How can we go from where we are to where we need to be? And I think the genius of structuring this conversation is to set that up.
Yes. There's some questions. Oh, here we go. This is excellent. So this is coming from the folks that are watching on Facebook. And it says, awesome to hear this discussion. How do we enforce our strengths in policy? And I'm going to jump back to Monique to start the answer for this one. And we'll continue to go around.
The steps are really quite simple. It's right down Perdido Street, where we can begin in terms of having policy that reflects our values, priorities, improving present conditions, and doing that with an eye towards future generations to come in the future. That's around housing. That's around our budget. I mean, right now, we should be speaking loud and clear on a budget priority that sets very clearly as a line item, no fuzzy rhetoric or anything like that to obscure it, but $35 million in the city of New Orleans budget for the fair and full relocation of the residents of Gordon Plaza. Residents who for the last 30 to 40 years moved into homes that they paid for, that were marketed to Black families, that were built on the city waste dump called the Agriculture Street dump, and later became a Superfund site because of the tremendous amount of toxic, hazardous materials found in the soil through the years of waste dumped on that site where with the homes built on top of it. And residents have not been able to relocate away from that, tremendous threat to their health that has taken lives. And more importantly, the situation is worse now with climate change because the subsidence is becoming more of a recurrent problem throughout the community with land sinking. And even moderate rainfall can make it impossible for residents to leave or enter in the community to get to their homes or leave from their homes because of the flooded streets. And then you've got the situation of stormwater runoff from rainfall in an area next to the residents of Gordon Plaza's home, where the dump is still there, bare and naked, and with contaminated soil flowing and washing off in the rain into the residential areas. So climate change has made the situation more extreme and urgent around relocation. And right now, our city council and the mayor are working on budget negotiations with public hearings. And residents of Gordon Plaza have been there loud and strong with the demand for their fully funded relocation. By the way, that relocation is supported in the City of New Orleans master plan. Why? Because those residents put their strengths in policy to get that language in the amendments a few years ago. And so the basis for that budget change comes out of this policy that residents fought for in the master plan. And now we just need people pulling together to make that policy a reality with a budget dollars that matches the relocation needs residents have been fighting for decades. I mean, this is a human rights violation happening in our very own city that we can do something about. So that's one clear way, and the sky's the limit beyond that in terms of policy that speaks to the needs we all have around affordable housing, the criminal justice system, and renewable energy that also supports underemployed and unemployed people with training and job placement. I mean, we can make all of that possible.
Thank you. Yes, and we also had another comment, which connects to what you just said, because you're talking about the citizens pushing for the policy to go through. And we also did
a line item budget, $35 million for a fully funded relocation, the residents of Gordon Plaza, long overdue.
Yes, and that is something that's a huge victory.
It would be, but we got to get it. We don't have to get. We need to push for it.
Yes.
There has been discussions, rhetoric, language. We need to see that in the budget. $35 million line item for the relocation, fully funded and fair relocation of the residents of Gordon Plaza. Should be clearly shown in the budget of our city of New Orleans.
Yes, and
I agree with that.
Yes,
Absolutely.
I agree with that, and there's some history.
Oh, beyond.
The EPA administrator from Region 6 came down in '93 and offered then Mayor Mark Morial the deal, because we had pushed for a complete community buyout. EPA said, we'll put up 29 million. The city will put up 2 million, and that'll work the buyout. The Morial administration said, we don't have the money, and the deal was off. So I think if we move to publicize that City Hall, the federal government wanted to do it, and maybe we can get the federal government to do it again. But City Hall was a factor that canceled it before. Now, as we talk about policy, I think we should also look at Entergy. I believe that Entergy having to make a profit is the barrier to the service that we don't get. I think we need to look for a way, and I think we need to have a lot of voices included, a way to provide electric and gas service to New Orleans that is free of profit and is for the people and not the capitalist system.
I wanted to say a word about policy too. Carol, you had another question though, didn't you?
Well, it was connected to policy, but it's also about, we had from our Facebook stream, we had a person ask you specifically about how people can learn more about the forums that are happening. I know there's Together New Orleans that's meeting regularly, but they want to know about forums that they can attend, so they can go. They can certainly go to Perdido Street, right? They can certainly go to City Hall, and other forums that are gathering, where people are meeting, where they can connect to work more.
Sure. So they can attend Justice and Beyond. Our forums will be by way of Zoom, and they can send me an email at gmanning1973@yahoo.com. That's gmanning1973@yahoo.com, and I'll make sure they get on our mailing list. But in January, we'll start meeting again in person. And we're planning on meeting here at Broadmoor Community Church starting January the 10th, and so at 5 o'clock. And so welcome that. But as a leader in Together New Orleans too, we're having a big assembly December the 14th at 6:30, and that will be at First Grace Church in order to give people a better understanding and to ratify a system of governance that we're moving into, and to give people who may not be prepared to step right into Together New Orleans to see how we're going to structure ourselves and really sort through whether they want to be a dues-paying, bona fide member organization of Together New Orleans. That'll be December 14th at 6:30 at First Grace Church.
There's also on Zoom a forum called Energy, no T, Energy and You. And that's done by the Energy Future New Orleans. It's a coalition that includes the Deep South Center for Environmental Justice and several local groups and organizations and community leaders around the city. And what the Energy and You forums focus on are just that, the ways in which we connect with energy as on a daily basis, and how we can work together to build policy for a better future where energy is sustainable, where it's not polluting us and it's not harming us. And so that's looking at renewable energy, real renewable energy, energy efficiency, and equity is at the center of that, so that we're not leaving out, but in fact being very inclusive and centering the work of righting the wrong that we have right now, where people have to, sacrifice greatly in order to pay electric bills, and are also being lives are being shortened in the work in the operation at power plants to generate electricity because of the pollution that's released into the environment, particulate matter 2.5 being one of them. So that's happening. And on December 2nd at 6 o'clock, the Energy Future New Orleans Coalition will be hosting a candidate forum for the candidates who are in the runoff in the city council district races, that will focus in on these questions around how will they, what are their plans to regulate energy and set energy policies for the city of New Orleans. So we encourage folks to come to that, and they can go to the website efno.org for updates and announcements of Energy and You forums, as well as more information about the candidate forum coming up on December 2nd at 6 o'clock.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, I want to thank all of you for a very powerful evening, sharing your time with us, and also helping us begin to build this larger community that we are working on, to connect to advocacy, to bring in the arts more, to give a voice to these policies, to embody them and help people understand how they can become part of the movement and the different places that they're going to be able to go to these important dates that are coming up. So someone else asked, where can we go, or how can we, groups are there to enforce rights? So it is good to know that these are out there, and we encourage everybody to go out to these forums. Oh yes, and I'm sorry, there's one more, and it's a very powerful question. This is inclusive to disabled homeless veterans, elderly and less educated and qualified. When are we going to discuss housing and the citizens of New Orleans?
I would say it's being discussed right now. There's a group called Greater New Orleans Housing Alliance, which is also part of the Energy Future New Orleans Coalition, but that's their daily bread every day, is working and hammering out affordable housing policy, safe and affordable housing policy for people in the city of New Orleans. We're being really, let's be honest, squeezed out. And that includes, putting pressure on city council as well as state reps and Governor John Bel Edwards as well around the expansion of the crisis under the COVID-19 pandemic, with job losses and the way in which the economy is really tightened. So Greater New Orleans Housing Alliance is an advocacy organization is an advocacy coalition of many groups here in the New Orleans metro area. It's also part of a Louisiana statewide housing advocate. So it's not a question of when, it's underway. And so I would suggest that the person who asked the question, look them up and get in, and see if that's something that you'd like to get involved with.
Okay, well, they say they're a part of this organization, but it's struggling with community support, and that they meet weekly. So the forums that you mentioned, could that be a way for them?
I'm not quite sure what they mean by they're struggling for community support. In what way?
So I think they're looking for a way. It looks like they're working on connecting local community to the larger community, and targeting like the governor, because there's a $50 million budget that hasn't been moved on yet, or that they've been sending. Apparently they've been very active sending responses or sending emails, and they are waiting for a response back from the governor. Mm-hmm. So how can they connect, or what resources are you all aware of that are out there that they can connect to in order to push it further?
Is this a tenant organization, or are these people renters?
Well, they said they're part of the Housing Alliance. That's what, when Monique was speaking about it, that's what they responded to.
Good.
I wonder if they're talking, I don't know if they're talking about the same organization that Monique is referring to.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, they said both.
Okay.
So they're very engaged. So this is one of.
If it's a question that it's a struggle, we hear you. If it's more about, I don't know what the expectation is. Is the expectation that it shouldn't be a struggle? I'd like to live that kind of a life, but being in the struggle is, we're all having these battles on different fronts of struggle. I'm not quite, it seems like the question is kind of going a perspective that, yeah, what are the solutions out there? And I would just say that it's really struggling towards the solution, and so it's a pitched battle, right? And I can't say more than that. Part of that is organizing and talking to more people and expanding the base and being accountable to the base and keeping that vision together around what everybody can collectively be pursuing together. But that work is an ongoing, it's an ongoing fight and battle and process. I don't know how you can cheat it or shortcut it to say, here's your solution and we've got it. I mean, the housing is a human right, but saying that doesn't make it a reality. And it's a struggle around the world. So I'm just offering, what I was doing was offering groups who have taken on the struggle and the fight. And if that person who's asking the question is part of it, that's great. And, if they're, I'm not quite sure what else I can offer than, being in the fight and just being diligent about, expanding and building your base and being accountable to it and holding to a vision and, holding, decision makers' feet to the fire and trying to make, bring other people within the base into the decision-making process and strategic engagement around that.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like they're one of the things they may be speaking about is Together New Orleans, but the idea of a coalition coming together.
That's it.
Because I know Together New Orleans is actively working on getting people out to the polls and voting, but the goal is to also push forward policy, like what Monique was speaking about earlier, about making it a line item in the budget. That will go through and be voted on in City Council. So, Pastor Manning, could you just remind people again of when that foreign meeting is going to be and where?
Right. So, Together New Orleans is going to have a large assembly on December the 14th at 6:30 at First Grace Church. What I would encourage this person to do, if you have a faith-based institution or another institution that wants to get engaged in Together New Orleans, we're still adding to people and institutions that will be a part of Together New Orleans. And so, what Monique is, and I think what's being said is make sure that you're aligning yourself with a broader coalition and numbers of people in order to move the needle, because while one may not get a response from the governor, organizing with a large group of people can help strategize to make that happen. And so if you are a part of a church or another institution that is not engaged, seek to get them engaged in groups like Together New Orleans or Justice and Beyond, so that we can mobilize together to help formulate strategies to change policy.
Thank you. All right, and that's what they were looking for. They said, thank you, awesome. So thank you. And also thank you to you too, Monique. And Pat Bryant, we so appreciate you joining us. And this is going to be an ongoing, continuing conversation. This is just the beginning, and we are building as we go.
Can we thank you and Ashe for doing this?
Phenomenal program.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Thank you. And so I'm going to encourage, here comes Baba Wood, because he's going to tell us a little bit about tomorrow. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Carol.
Oh, wood sound.
Me and myself, check that out. I appreciate your wisdom and expertise as always, and really just guiding us in these conversations. And with that, I'm going to talk a little bit about tomorrow. Thank y'all so much again. Tomorrow we'll be blessed by another edition of Lose Louisiana, our last part of the series, the future. Right? We've talked about the ancestral wisdom. We talked about the current conditions. Now we want to plan for the next generation and plan for the next chapter in this conversation on climate. But before we go, of course, I have to hit y'all with a little something. So please enjoy this as we leave. Thank you.
We came back to, redeem the property. It's been a challenge, but I think it's a challenge more so because, it's just thousands of dollars that you just don't have in your hand right now. It's, I say right because I am one of these people who, believes in the great abundance of of the universe and everything. And I believe in both expected and unexpected delights. My husband and 2 children and this little one that's now decided to come through will hopefully be here and create and make even more, just to add on to the stories of even, more memories, more etchings, in the wall and things like that, which is, that's an important thing for me, I guess, being a writer and being an artist and storyteller and healer in essence, to make sure that we're preserving our stories, and this house, right, is a part of that storytelling. I'm trusting that things are working out so that we can keep this property, like I said, in the hands of the family, that it stays here with us, because everything else is already gone in that. So everything else is already gone. So it's best that we're here and that we stay planted, whatever that means, but that we stay planted. Yeah.
Every birth needs water, needs dark, needs to be honored and remembered, everyone for its different coming forth. Each birth bears its own map and blueprint, its own name and vibration, its own self. When we emerged after the big rains, many were surprised, thought they'd never see us again, thought the dead would always be dead, not knowing our Easter is every day, not knowing that wherever we rose in Pick a City, America, our red-beamed Mondays would still exist, our fish-fried Fridays would still come at the end of each week, our music would still play and heal and whole. How easily they forget what we are made of. Forget how we would move between swamp and concrete. Forget how we made home in the wettest of places, foreign and far-fetched, barefoot and unstitched. Forgot we put ourselves together from a million fragments before. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Grand, never far from the petite, the lessons still course through our veins, still flash in the dark parts of our existence. Some things never change or leave, and some of us never forget. I remember the way like the back of my hand, no pathways and trees by heart, tuned my ear to the tone of your aura, so even when the familiar things do leave, I can still find you, and you will still know me. Oh, some things, they never change. And you are one of them. This is not a eulogy, not an obituary for the dead, not a story of those who once were, but of those who live, those whose spirits walk and work and fly.
like bringing somebody by, you know, to check him out because she's this tastes like sugar. And she brought him to
Tastes
the
like
bookstore.
sugar. Yes,
and when I saw that smile and everything, I said, oh man, and he's good looking. But I knew from the start that this man, this was the one. And the way I see him with B, and he know his name. I don't even know if years I've been knowing Bean. I don't remember his name. And he says it, and he looks at, and he loves this woman. And I'm just so happy that that she found him and he found her. I don't know how it happened. I don't give a shit how it happened.
Jack been sweating me.
Jack been sweating. Oh, I'm so glad. Man, a sweat. You made a sweat. I see that.
Okay.
You made a work for it, huh?
Leave it to him. Talk about, you know, I spit that good game in them pretty red ears of hers.
Spit something, baby.